Well, welcome to the North Branch Potomac River scenario. In this scenario, I will work this train using the work order. And here's a snapshot, a quick glimpse of the work order here, and we'll come back to this as we run this train from Cumberland. We start out just south of the Cumberland, Maryland yard, and we continue to head north. I consider it north because we're going from Maryland up to Rockwood, Pennsylvania. But for most of the ride, you're going from east to west. You're heading west, northwest. But as we roll on into the yard, we're going to drop off a series of cars and do a cut. And the work order designated the cut at this gondola here and this tank car. And I'm going to leave this tank all the way forward to the engine in the yard and come back and pick up the rest of the train after we drop those off. So come along with me as I do these deliveries and drop-offs. There's not going to be any pickups. There's no cars out to be picked up in this scenario. This particular route doesn't have any industries between the Cumberland yard and Rockwood. There's a couple spurs that we're going to drop off some cars on, but there's no industry, so we're going to just go ahead and take advantage of the spurs. So we'll make our split. In order to do so, we want to go ahead and put on the handbrake so we don't have this string of cars rolling out the yard. So we cut and we're off to go back and pick up the remainder of the train that it will be our cars that we deliver. Now, if you haven't seen it, I've posted another video on how this scenario was created and how you can create your own scenarios similar to this. Take a look at the work order. The first set of cars to be delivered, and we're looking at the numbers as they roll by, checking them with the work order so we know just where we're going to have to split it, make our cut, and which ones will be delivered. So from here on forward, actually that car will be left behind, and then from here on forward we'll be delivering this whole set into the yard warehouse. I always enjoy riding the back of the train, catching the view, and we're going to slip a couple hoppers down along the north side of the warehouse. So there's this, we're looking at the work order, we can see that there's 2 hoppers to be set out north track of warehouse. And then the next set and then we have these tank cars which are going to be put in front of the warehouse. So these 2 tank cars we're going to drop off in front of the warehouse alongside the natural gas tanks. Different fuel, but that's where they're going to place them. So bringing up the work order, we have the gondola, which we're going to drop off right on the south side of the warehouse along this dock area. And then we're back to picking up the rest of our cut to take on up into Pennsylvania. So up the mountain we go. The work order calls for us to go up to Heidemann, and there's a spur up there. Looking at the route map, and since this scenario is hijacked off a service, you can bring up the HUD and the service will continue to tell you when you meet objectives. So an error flashed up telling us there's something wrong with the service. But that's okay, we're going to ignore that. It doesn't stop us from moving along and continuing on with the scenario. But it recognizes that we don't have all the cars like the original service intended us to have. But don't worry about that. We just continue along, and the objective actually has been met of reaching that point. And if for some reason the game crashes or something happens where you would get booted out, it would go into a menu to take you back to the last checkpoint or last objective that was met. So we made our way up the mountain a bit. Of course, I'm not doing the full 3-hour ride here, but we'll look at a work order, and this tells us that there's a spur right outside of town here. And we got, it's quite a long spur, but we got a few cars to drop off at that site. When you're driving the train, and here we meet our second objective, and another red warning comes up saying there's something wrong. But it's not going to stop us from doing our tasks. And it's put up the next town that we're supposed to head to, or the next objective of Mance, 12 miles up. But we still hadn't reached the spur outside of Heidemann. And once we go over the bridge, that's my visual clue that we're getting close to this little outskirt of the town that has a team track, I guess, where we can drop off a few cars here. So looking at a work order, looks like we have a few cars to drop off here. And I know typically I should list off each and every car in order that no mistakes are made. But to keep this brief and just give you an idea of how to run this scenario, I'm taking a few shortcuts on the work order, kind of like taking some shorthand, and just making a note that we're going to drop off all cars from the engine back to a particular boxcar, which is numbered on the work order, so you know which one goes. So there's going to be a whole string of cars here from the engine right on back to a particular box. And if I get I want to split them behind this red single flag. Here's our work order. We can check the number on the box and the number on a work order. Make sure we do the split correct. Go back here and set the brake. We don't want any runaway cars. And we'll do our cut. And there we go. So with the CSX heavy haul route, there's not a lot of industries, but I'm doing all I can to use this route to learn what can be done and to make the most of it. Now I'm standing in front of this red flag. That red post is an indication that cars are not to go out on the main and foul the main. We have no choice but to leave a few cars out there. We're having to make a drop off, and we're on the schedule to do so. So there will be some other trains coming, but they're coming down the other track. And as long as we drop off behind the red flag, there shouldn't be any interference between the two rails as from the cars that are dropped off being too close into the points and the trains going by. So for safety reasons, we'll make sure the cars are behind this red flag. You don't want to ever drive the engine past that red flag. If you drive your engine far enough behind that red flag and then try to go back out to the main, it'll crash the, well, it doesn't crash the game, but it'll put up a failure and boot you out to the main menu. Go ahead and make our cut again. You know, once again, if you do make a mistake and you get booted out to the main menu, you can always go back. The menu at that point will give you an option to go back to your last achievable objective, which is actually back down in Heinemann when we got that little notice that we had another 12 miles to go to Mainz. So we drop off a string of cars here. And go back and pick up the rest of our cars. And so there's only got about this boxcar and 2 hoppers left. So we only got 3 cars left to deliver. Now, I got this all edited out on a video. If you make it through all 30 minutes of it, but in reality this will take you well over 3 hours to perform. Always want to release the handbrake. You don't want to just couple up and take off and forget that you have a handbrake going. If you do, the engine will start struggling. You'll think, what's going on here? But it's a handbrake set. You probably won't be able to get too far. So I know I'm not talking as much as I normally would during my videos, but just running through the scenario, and when I hit the highlights I say something. So in quiet moments, just enjoying the scenery as we make our way up the mountain. And, you know, I tried doing a little bit of an environmental setting of rain, but I didn't want it to be a completely overcast rainy day. But obviously I did want a sun shower, which I certainly did get that. But there's almost no clouds in the sky. It's kind of silly. So next time I'll have to set more clouds up in the sky with the rain. I am taking a little bit of a frame hit because by setting the wetness on the environmental control, you get a lot of reflections off the train cars and the rails and everything that's being simulated as being wet, and those reflections are causing a little bit extra memory hit, a little extra load. Also, when you have another train coming by, as we see here, another train coming down the track, that adds a lot of extra polys and information to to process. So if you don't have a high-end, I'm running this on a laptop, so I'm not really a high-end computer here, and so I take a little bit of a frame hit when, and I usually get a heads-up cue before a train comes into view, because I'll have a little bit of a stutter and a pause, and I'll think, what? Uh-oh, hey, maybe a train's coming, and sure enough, I'll see the train coming in. We'll just keep headed on up. We're into Pennsylvania now, and continue to head on up the rails. The thing of it is, creating these scenarios. Here comes another train, believe it or not. So quite a few trains are running, and there's quite a bit of activity. But in creating these scenarios, using the service, you have the ability to do everything you want to do as far as creating your own scenario to the time of day. For the most part, you're going to pick a particular service that, looking at the timetable, so you can pick one in the morning, the afternoon, late at night, evening, and set your environmental settings. So basically you can create your scenario for any weather condition, any time of any season you want, and location you want to begin with and end. So you really got to take advantage of the services to do all the things you want to do to create your scenario. Looking at our work order, we're coming up on the last spur to drop off the 3 remaining cars. And I have each of those listed out on the work order. But, you know, that's just a double check, because these are the only 3 cars we got left, and all of them go into this spur, so they better be the right ones. Yeah, so what I've learned is that the services have given us the opportunity to create scenarios, select the time of day, select the time of year, select your weather conditions, and the location you want to start at. And the only limitations is choosing a service for a particular time of day and location for a particular engine type that's available for that route. But there's enough there that you can find something to suit your fancy and be able to do create the scenario like so. So like I said, I have posted another video on detail on how to do this and create the scenarios. So we set the brake, make our cut, and we're done with our deliveries for the morning. For the afternoon. We started this all back at the Cumberland yard, coming into Cumberland yard right around noon time. And we're not taking this all the way up to Rockwood. We could. I've done it actually using the scenario, but what we're doing, looking at the work order, now we got these 2. We got to make a office visit up into Myersdale. There's our 3 cars we left behind. And now nothing left to do but head on up to the Meyersdale office, take care of some paperwork, check in with them, take a look at our work order, make sure everything that was on it was taken care of. And you notice it'll make mention here that we got to flip the engine control and head back towards Cumberland. So in order to head the other direction, we got to turn this engine from being lead to being trailing, and the other engine, we're going to get in that one to make that lead. So let's climb aboard and I'll show you how we do that. Now you set the handbrake before you do this on the engine. I didn't get that into the video, but that needs to be done before you start messing with this. There's two things you're doing. You need to set the brake control. So the lead engine, which will be the one behind us now, was switching over, and for that one to have control of our brakes, we need to set that to cutout. And then the second thing we need to do is turn over the power to the lead, and in order to do that, we need to turn these three switches, and we turn all three of those off. Then the other engine will control the power on this one. And going up to our box here, we need to flip the switch. Letting it know how to communicate between the two. And to be honest, there's also a MU valve or something that needs to be turned to set that one to trailing and set this one to lead. And I'm having trouble finding it. Going through these steps here, so this one now was the trailing, will now be the lead, so we got to flip this over and set that one to be the lead. So dial that one straight up, and now we should have, we got to turn on the power. So this one would be the power unit now to control the power for both engines. And then of course, like I said, there's two things. There's the power and then the brake system. And then we'll turn the brake system over to freight, and the one behind us is on cutout. And so now we have control over the brake for both engines from this cab, and we have control over both engines' power from this cab. And we're ready to take off. Oh, and of course, we want to turn the lights on and all that. And of course, the engine behind us now, I had set it in neutral, obviously before I got out to go into the station. But we're going to go ahead and put it in forward and give it a little throttle. And here we go, heading down the track. So this is how we can head back to Cumberland, but the problem is, as we're heading back, the signals are all going to be red, and we're not going to be able to go past them. And so, that's the issue with free roam, and maybe one of the reasons why free roam is not available is because in Train Sim World, always having AI trains running and having activity going on in a world outside ourselves. I know there's been some criticism that there's not enough activity of people walking around, but it's there, and once we begin to build our own routes, we can put in as many people and AI trains and activities as we want, but it'll probably have a hit on performance. But in order to have free roam, you actually would have to turn all the signal systems off, or have some way to go into a control system to change them outside the engineer. I can try. I do a request, and of course it's not going to accept the request. So unless we can also play control tower and revert the signals. So I hope you enjoyed, and have fun with the scenario.